In this week's video, I release episode number 1 of a series called Artist Spotlight. About a year ago, I wanted to find a way to improve my storytelling and also meet new artists and work on cool projects. So I came up with this series, Artist Spotlight, where I interview and meet new artists and figure out kind of why they are artistic the way they are, what makes them unique. In this episode, I sat down with Wharfie Boy, an artist from Ontario that's recently moved to Vancouver. He's had a really cool story, and since we filmed his episode, he's released some really amazing art. So I'll have all his links in the description of this video so you guys can go check him out. Here's episode number 1 of Artist Spotlight, and hope you guys enjoy.
Hey, my name is Andrew Hurt, also known as Wharfie Boy. I'm from Kingston, Ontario. So Wharfie kind of relates to this like Southern Ontario feel, I guess. Most of my family's from a spot called Belleville in Southern Ontario, so it's just like your classic kind of, you know, small town. You could just drive through it in a couple seconds, or you could stay and spend a whole life in Belleville. And my grandpa was this like firefighter, and he's this kind of rougher. He's from this rougher side of the tracks, and they'd call them wharfies. It'd be like down by the water, and they're kind of like nowadays the people that would fight really loudly in a Dollarama, you know what I mean? Like a dollar store to like let you know. My grandma, who was my favorite person in the world, who was from Point Anne, she was this like nice kind of old lady her whole life, took care of the kids. But then you also have this cut down the line, this like wharfie mentality of this like rougher, like be a man type, like that type beat. And when I look at that word, I remember I hated it for so long. But as I look at my family tree and, you know, all the things that make me so beautiful and the man I am now, it's gotta be an accumulation of things. Like it's never just good or bad or like scary, and it's like a combination. And although I never had a relationship with my grandpa, it still like rings in me, that Wharfie. I mean, I even have it tattooed on me, like the Wharfie. It's just, for me, it's a mantra. Never forget where you came from, and also it's in you to choose. I choose to acknowledge that Wharfie side, but choose me every time. It's like an obligation to, because I can choose. I like choose to be an artist. Like, you gotta choose the like beautiful things if you can. I owe everything and nothing to being a Wharfie. I think I've always been like a creative person. You know, when I was growing up, I was always like a very loud and sensitive kid. My parents would ask me every night, like, how you doing? You know, how's your day going? I was lucky enough to grow up that way. So I was always kind of like exploring how I felt about things. I always felt comfortable letting people know if I felt a certain way, good and bad. I'm still that way. But I think art came from just like having time to spend alone. I just kind of like started looking within about how I felt and how I used to deal with things when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I used to draw all the time. My mom gave me journals to like write how I felt, and I feel like everyone grows past that at a certain point. You go like, oh, I'm an adult now. I'm like above writing out how I feel at the end of the day. And then I just kind of got to a point where I was like, hold on. I wasn't a student anymore, and I was like, this is how the world is. Like, and I just like 180'd myself and was like, I gotta get way more in tune with like the little kid in me that's fucking still there, man. You know, that little kid. So I started going back to like things that I do as a little kid. I started sitting on the ground more. I started like getting messy, and this shit just kind of came with it. Like it may seem obvious to a lot of people, but it wasn't to me that you could just like pick up a crayon and still check in with yourself the same way you used to after like second recess. Like, remember you used to like go to have like a nap, and then you'd get up and like draw a picture of your dog and then write how you felt about it? Like, you can still do that, and that's what this is. And I think people are like fucking with it for that reason, is because they can tell that it's like, it's so doable. Like, my art, I feel, is so, anybody can do this. Like, there's nothing I'm doing here that's too complicated. I think it's just the fact that it is done that makes it art, you know. In August, me and my buddies moved from Toronto to Vancouver out west. We make comedy videos together. I've known these guys forever, I love them. But I just remember sitting in my room and going, there's like fucking, I need to like figure something out. It's just like a shell of a room, coronavirus vibes. And I was like, all the art that I wanted, I couldn't afford. And I just started picking up art supplies and I started blanketing my room with the stuff that was me, you know? You're not above that like little boy that's still this, you know what I mean? Like, we think that just because we have like jobs and shit now that we're above having little like temper tantrums and hissy fits, and like, do it organized. I happen to do it and make a painting every time, you know? I'm a baby. All this shit comes out of the fact that I'm like the most sensitive. I used to hate that about myself because, you know, growing up, it's like, hey, get over it. Be a man, you know? As you grow older, you kind of get a little bit more calloused. But if I think about how I was raised and like who my heroes were, they would always talk shit out with me. My grandma, my mom, my dad, they would always talk shit out with me. So it was always this contradiction of like, you know, get over it. But also like the people that I really love would talk shit out with me. So maybe don't get over it. Find a way. My way's making these. My buddy Ben, he meditates. Other buddy Ben, I live with two Bens. My other buddy, he makes music. You gotta do things in your day now that, you know, allows you to check in with yourself. If I'm feeling a type of way and I can share it with you, fuck yeah, dude. That's the point. That's like the whole point of this. I genuinely love it. Like I don't, painting kind of caught me by surprise, but it's me now. Once it started picking up traction and I knew that, you know, I was just putting things out and through word of mouth and just like Instagram and technology, like I started to gain this following, and I was putting out art like every day, like, and I just kind of was thinking about, you know, I have this voice. I'm lucky enough to like be able to express this voice I have. To me, something that hit me recently was like my grandma. My grandma was like my hero growing up. My grandma was like, every summer I'd run away to grandma's house and we'd just spend like afternoons just talking. Like I was the most like, I never had to play as a kid. If you just sat me in front of my grandma and just let me listen to stories, I could have just sat there forever. And still somewhere in time, that's still happening. I know that situation's still happening. And she'd read every day. She was she was so full of life, like the most full of life person. She taught me the value of like storytelling. My grandma could tell a story like fucking nobody could. Like she was so good at it, and she was funny, and she's all these things that I still revere in people today. And as I started into like teenagehood, my grandma got sick. And she had this word now that is like forever will be in my brain. Your grandma has Alzheimer's. Recently, she passed away while I was out west, and I'm lucky to have a group around me that takes care of me and that loves me. And it was never a thought of aloneness, but it was definitely this like helpless feeling I had when she passed away. She's in Belleville, and I'm over here out west now, and I felt kind of almost like, well, like, what do I even do? How do I even let her know that I loved her, you know? Like, in a weird way, you're just like, obviously your grandma knows you love her, but, you know, how do you know? And this Alzheimer's series was me just diving into that feeling of like, what does that look like for me to go through a period where you lose a best friend? That could look like something else to you or to, you know, that could look like anything, but this is what it looked like to me. And I think people can relate to that. Like there's different feelings within grief. There's like the scary part of it, which is like, I saw myself in my grandma too. And I'm just like, this could be any of us, you know, this could be, and that's this piece here. That's, you know, will they listen to us? Are they going to listen to us when we get that old? Because They're not separate. They had stories. They were young once, and they're in love. I drew like, what is someone our age gonna look like old? We've never seen that. Like, did people ever wear flat tops in the 30s, like Supreme hoodies in the 30s? You know what I mean? Like, so I drew like us with like the flat cap on, and then like a very childish drawing of whoever's next. And like, part of that fear is like, well, fuck, man, like, they were in love once too. They were full of life once too. That's part of the upsetness, regardless of if it's your grandma or not, or what your relationship is. It's like, it makes you think about death in this weird way where you go like, is there a clock ticking? You know, like, is there some sort of, you know, clock that I'm not hearing? And that's why this piece is kind of like worried and jumbled, and it's messy, and it's everything that upset thought is to me is on this canvas. Like, I don't even know if I can like fully explain each decision in this. I just know that I was feeling it so hard in the moment, and it just is like that. You just gotta leave things kind of messy sometimes. Like, that piece kind of scares the shit out of me, actually, now that I'm looking at it. Like, I did it and I put it out, and then I haven't looked at it since, and some of them are kind of like, they should make you a little bit uncomfortable. I'm sharing a thing that usually you don't like. You're never just like, hey, what's up, man? Yeah, so anyways, and like you share these are like thoughts that, you know, you kind of gotta like ease into. And part of that sadness is also that feeling of like, you know, remembering the relationship of you and that person. You know, part of the sadness is you go like, you see them in the end moment. With this piece here, I was just diving into like, you know, the feeling of losing someone that you have so many beautiful memories with, right? Like, you see them at their end moment, and there's kind of a pause that happens, at least for me, where you think that it's only that end moment, you know? I took it on so hard that I was like, oh, this is like such a fucking tragedy. This is like so sad. And I was stuck in that feeling, but I didn't realize until I grew into being like a young man that sadness came from a place of also having all those beautiful moments, all that middle stuff, you know? That middle stuff is what makes that end part so sad, and I had to just put that out there. That I know somewhere in time, I'm still walking down that street in Belleville with my grandma. I'm still there, and so is she, and those moments don't go away, you know? They don't disappear. They're there forever, and they can live through me, you know? My grandma at one point was young and full of life and dancing, and she still is. Those people are still there, and every time I paint, I think about her, and those people are still alive if we keep them alive. Part of that series was telling stories that needed to be told, because that's all we got. We have all these like dope shirts now, and you know, weed's legal, but like, at the end of the day, man, all we have is stories. Like, those are so valuable to us, and my grandma's story is one that needs to be heard. And I hope that people see this series and go like, oh, you can work through a thing by just picking up a crayon and jumping at a sheet of paper. Like, scream it into existence. Like, let people know how you feel. That's the point. And trust that people will be around for you. Honestly, man, like 90% of my time making all this stuff spent dancing. Most of it spent dancing and like physically dancing, like having fun. And I'm not a good dancer. I'm a big boy. I can move though, and I dance, and then 10% of it is like actually making the thing. And I think the 90% of dancing is like getting in tune with what like I really want to say, you know? Like, I have something to say, but also want to have so much fun doing it. Like, every one of these was so much fun for me to do, even if nobody was buying them. Like, my way of checking in with myself also just happens to be so much fun. Like, I'm so lucky that this is the way that I figure my shit out, you know? Marvin Gaye, Mac Miller, a joint, a black coffee, some fucking crayons, man. Like, just, you know, like, think about how little kid you would set it up. Like, I think the oil pastel is like such like an insight to what I'm trying to get out of art, and it's just trying to connect more with like little kid me. So I set this room up like a schoolyard. Like I just set it up, you know, have fun with it. And then, yeah, if people like it, that's dope. If people don't like it, that's also like part of it, man. Like, because I choose that it's art, just is. Like, some of these don't even look fully done, but because I chose that they were art, it just is. That's the magic. That's the magic of all this. And I almost hope that you have an opinion strong enough to maybe even go against this. That's part of it too. Like if you see something and you're like, my kid could do it. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. Like if you look at some of my shit and go, I could do that. You can. You definitely can do any of this. Like pick up a crayon and, you know, figure it out. Like all this shit is just like so doable, you know? It's like I just chose to do it, and that's what makes it art, I think.